Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video about the Syndemic, um, Super-Pneumonia, Permademic, also known as Permapandemic, and the immunity that lie. So I figured since it is now holiday season and people are probably thinking about and making plans to travel around, see large numbers of friends and family, and have all their usual holiday season events, I figure now would be a good time to make a video about things that possibly you may want to avoid. I mean, can't really tell. And that if you got to do what you got to do, but people should factor the best information and the reality of the situation into their plans for the holidays. And so some of the things that people are not really realizing, obviously, are and not really being told is, it depends on where you get the information from, number one, but there the biggest probable takeaway from this is that from this video, I hope, is that the idea that COVID-19 happened, right? It was a huge, terrible event where everyone in the world, inevitably caught this novel coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, or some variant thereof, or possibly more than one variant, and repeatedly, everybody caught COVID-19, and that was terrible. There were lockdowns. There were, or maybe they weren't lockdowns. Some places did lockdowns, actually. Some of them alluded to lockdowns without actually doing them. But, there's this pandemic era, and then it was really difficult. People died. Millions of people died. Everyone was sickened, and, travel, airports shut down. Vacations stopped happening. International travel stopped. Gyms and bars and yoga classes and churches and schools eventually, and all these things closed down. And people had to social distance. People had to take their temperatures. People had to drink their orange juice and then later get their vaccines, etc. And the pandemic era happened, and then now the pandemic is over. And every winter, this is part of the big lie, but every winter, and every time school starts, we are, quote unquote, paying the immunity debt, which is that because, this goes back to something, else, which is that a so-called common sense idea that ostensibly is scientific, but in fact is not so much. There's this idea that catching illnesses, colds, flus, just children playing in dirt, which I'm not saying that children shouldn't touch dirt or touch grass. Our kids normally do that as long as we still have grass on the planet Earth. But, there's the idea that kids get sicknesses like colds and flus and, strep throats and COVID-19. And when kids catch viruses, it builds up their immune system. The immune system gets trained like a muscle, right? And it gets exercised, and it gets stronger, and it gets more improved. And the white blood cells, add to their arsenal of anti-pathogen bullets that they're like, the army is like trained and gets stronger. Your T cells get more buff and tougher, and that makes them stronger. Every time you get sick, you're getting better, right? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger kind of comes from that common sense. It comes from that idea, right? That like when you get sick, you're getting improved. Even like the science fiction movie and radio play War of the Worlds, right, is based on this idea that your humans, and there's a particular group of humans that did this more so than others, who repeatedly got sick with so many different viruses again and again over time. Humans who have the Black Plague, and then smallpox and the tuberculosis and the measles and the mumps and the rubella, and then all these viruses, right? The aliens that invade Earth eventually got killed by the viruses that have been like evolving and just festering in these mega packed mega packed transmission maskless human cities, right? Like in Europe during the Black Plague, these super dense cities. One way that empires crumble, of course, like Rome also had very dense, very populated cities, and then you have very lax restrictions, and then malperforming governments, and then suddenly a virus, a plague, a pathogen comes through and just like rips through that tightly concentrated, super spreading prone multi-million person mega city. And that's the way that a lot of these and that's part of how these things evolve as well, is because of the rate of the spread of the viruses. Anyway, so the idea is that like there's this idea that like if you get these viruses, then you're gonna get if you keep getting these viruses, every time you get a virus, every time you get a bacteria, every time you get a illness, your body is getting stronger, right? And that's like been around for a long time. You hear that like, oh, I'm just having my kids, I want them to get some colds. When you catch the colds at the beginning of the year, that's great, because then that means that you're going to be strengthened for the rest of the year or something like that, right? And like but the reality is that the science that's coming in not only now, unfortunately, is that but that I think a lot of non-Western societies have always kind of suspected this, and has always avoided the illnesses, which is that like, yes, your body does gain some resistance to a particular virus after you've caught it, right? So like because your body is basically like has it has the immune system has a certain amount of the T cells, it has a certain amount of the white blood cells that target viruses, but they have to your body is being harmed while you're getting that virus. So your body is being inflamed. Inflammation increases all kind of problems in your body. Organ damage, like it can lead to damage in your blood vessels. Inflammation in your brain can cause brain damage, and there's other kinds of damage aside from inflammation that viruses and bacteria cause, right? So your body is being damaged, right? It's like to an extent, and COVID is super damaging relative to other illnesses. Like for example, like when people get the flu, strokes don't suddenly spike, and heart attacks don't spike, and people don't like suddenly get massive brain fog, and 20-year-olds aren't having half their face unmovable with a drooping eye after. I was just looking at a video of this like 20-year-old girl who thought, oh, nothing's gonna happen to me when I get COVID, because it's only older people. It's like in 2020, right? And then she had like serial strokes, and the doctor said, oh, you're just having anxiety, but then half her face stopped working, and then she can't feel her fingers and taste anything. Her tongue is numb now. So that colds, like, so that's another level of damage. So the COVID is doing more damage, right? But every time you get sick, your body is actually being damaged. Number one. Number two, the immunity that you're building up, right? The immunity that you're building up, as your T cells are, like, they're doing recon, right? And if you think of it in a military metaphor, we're all in the Empire, so we're gonna talk about that. It's like if the T cells are like seeking out. Right, they're like identifying, okay, what is this thing that is, or your immune system is identifying, what is this thing that is the foreign object that is attacking us? And when it looks like this, it has this spike protein, these cells have like this, molecule makeup. And so when we see something like this, right, when we see like this shape, this triangle, with those, particular, chemical composition, then attack that, right? And so, but that takes some time, right? So some people actually say that if you're getting COVID, if you have COVID or you suspect you have COVID, and you aren't having fevers, you aren't having like coughing and sneezing, if you're not having a reaction, that's actually can be worse, right? Because in fact, when you're catching an illness, the coughing, the sneezing is, you have those the nasal passageways, right? That can be they accumulate large quantities of the aerosolized spray that when you sneeze spreads and stays in the air for hours, and then everybody catches your aerosolized virus because COVID, like many countless other viruses, are airborne. But that nasal passage, that when you're sneezing, right, is your body trying to get rid of the accumulated reservoir of this foreign hostile entity, right? And your nose is trying to get rid of that. Your nasal hairs catch it. Your mucous membranes catch as much of that as this foreign body when you're breathing it in, and then try to sneeze it back out, right? And then your mucous membrane, when you're coughing, you're trying to get things out of your throat, out of your lungs, right? These are reactions when your body detects that there's an invader. But just because you're not coughing and you're sneezing, right? Just because you're not having coughing and sneezing and fever, is your body is trying to basically microwave, right? Because many viruses and microbes and bacteria and other microscopic enemies cannot survive certain temperatures, right? So your body tries to heat itself up with a fever to kill off the attacking entity. Now, but that doesn't always work, right? Because there's some viruses that that survive that. It is not good for your body. It does damage your body slightly, but that's part of the response, right? Because it's war. War hurts everybody, and so a large mammalian primate organism fighting a external organism, like both sides are in a struggle. They actually say that that's actually why bats are a major spreader, because bats are the single truly flighted mammal that can actually, like, they're flying foxes, but they don't really fly like 1,000 miles, or they can't fly like indefinite periods of time. But the bats can. They can fly far, and they cluster like many humans into million organism caves where the bats hang upside down, right? This sort of Nosferatu legends borrow from, obviously. They hang upside down in these caves, and they collect there in massive, very dense quantities. And so they anything that they have, any illness, any bacteria, virus that they have, they quickly spread, and then they travel very far, right? Travel long distances, and so they can spread a single virus, thousands and thousands of miles rapidly. And then and so anyway, and the bats also have the average bat body temperature is like 100, way over 100 degrees. So they don't actually experience as much of the impacts of the viruses because of their body temperature. But when they spread it to other organisms like humans, then that can be more damaging. Anyway, long story short, so when your body is fighting, when your body is trying to fight the illnesses, that could be a good thing, because that means that your body is trying to get rid of it, right? But if you contract COVID-19, or if you have caught it, whether you know it or not, right? When the virus enters your nose, goes into your lungs, right? Starts the spike proteins start doing their espionage warfare. They start subverting your immune system. They start infecting your organs and your blood, and then go into your brain, which is very difficult for antibiotics and other medicine to reach. And that's one reason why COVID is actually found in the brains of many patients and in the organs years later, even though your tests are coming up negative. It's in your intestines, right? So as the virus is spreading throughout your entire body, it's not just in your nose and your throat. So this one of the big lies that was known earlier and hasn't been communicated to most people, certainly in the Western world, is that the COVID-19 virus is not a respiratory illness. It's not, it has respiratory symptoms. The earlier ones had maybe more respiratory symptoms, but not necessarily, because you're coughing and you're sneezing. It does go into your lungs, right? If you exercise a lot, right, COVID can has a tendency to rapidly increase in intensity and damage. So people who young 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds who went to the gym, right, after they're feeling a little sick and a little winded, then suddenly they felt a bit better. Then they went to a gym, or they started running around an Olympic track, or they started lifting weights. And then while they were doing, especially the people who are really into athletic activity, while they were doing that, treadmill or their Stairmaster, or doing their sit-ups, all of a sudden they just rapidly got really super winded, lightheaded, and then deteriorated real fast, and then collapsed. Some of them just even died, right? Or went into a coma, basically, passed out, and then they were rushed to the hospital, and then they had the severe COVID. That was in 2020, right? And that was young people who got really sick. I remember there's somebody in Hawaii. He was working out in Waikiki, and then he was he was a young bartender. He's 24, loved going to the gym, and he was rushed straight to the ER. He had catastrophic COVID. His lost half of his body weight, couldn't ever lift again, couldn't walk for a long period of time, barely could walk later. And so, someone who loved going to the gym, right? Because, but that was one of the, it's because COVID interferes with the way that your body uses energy, the way that your cells, right, take the phosphates and the sugars and unleash the chemical energy stored in the chemical bonds of sugars and proteins. COVID interferes with that, and so, and if you rapidly exercise, also a lot of it was in your lung tissue, especially the early COVID, but the COVID, it doesn't stay in your lungs, it doesn't stay in your throat, it doesn't stay in your nose. It's not just a cold. It's not like a bad cold, the flu. It's not a respiratory virus. Its worst impacts is not that, right? People who had no respiratory symptoms were just suddenly dying of massive blood clotting, leading to strokes and heart attacks, right? I know family members or people in our family who suddenly had heart attacks. They had no cold, no flu, no cough, no nothing. They just suddenly, really weird, 35-year-olds with no history of heart disease, heart attack, anything like that, just suddenly dying. Like I said, there were a 20-year-old girl. Actually, I'll show that right now. That there was this 20-year-old girl who suddenly had a series of strokes after getting COVID. And she was gaslit by the medical system, unfortunately, and lied to by them. Let me see, where's that one? Yeah, and she went to the doctor. She got on a plane. Where did I save it in my bookmarks? She got on a plane, went to the doctor. Not that one. Let's see. Yeah, this one here. Here we go.
One time I got COVID back in 2020 and I was like, oh, MG, this is the worst, but also I'm 21 years old. It should be relatively okay. I've never had any prior health issues. But then I started getting numbness in my hands and my forearms, along with really persistent headaches, which I never really had before. I attributed this to just being really stressed out because I just started the serving job. I was crying in the walk-ins. You guys know how it is. Yeah, you know how it is. But then my tongue goes numb in my mouth and I'm like, that's not supposed to happen. So I go to the ER, I pass out in the ER, drama queen, I know. They tell me, don't even worry about it. You're just anxious. Like they were agreeing with me. I was like, I knew it. Like, so sorry to waste your time. I go back home. 3 months later, I'm hanging out with someone. My entire left side of my face starts to droop. They're like, okay, time to go back to the hospital. I'm like, no, it's just anxiety. Don't you worry. But sadly, not anxiety, it was a stroke. And I had been having strokes, apparently, because my internal carotid arteries were closing up to be this teeny tiny small. So they had to open them back up with stents. And I was like, great, okay, that's totally great. We're done. Haha, that was traumatic. Putting that in the past. I fly to New York City because what else am I supposed to do? And then whilst in New York City, I get numbness again, this time in my head, and they find a big old marshmallow of inflammation behind my eyeball. So I go back home because no way I'm dealing with that by myself. Absolutely no way. In New York City, are you kidding? And when I wake up from the flight, no vision. No vision at all. So that's kind of unfortunate. And now it's 2023, and no one really knows why all of this happened exactly or how to get rid of it.
So, again, that's somebody who was like, in their early 20s. I forget how old she said, but nothing will happen to me. It's okay. She was told by the doctor, you're having anxiety, right? You're having anxiety. So that's part of the medical, unfortunately, medical complicity. Some people are actually saying, if you go to a doctor, try not to go to any doctors try to only go to young doctors, because the older doctors haven't updated. There's a lot that has been learned in the last 4 years, right? About everything. COVID has taught a lot of people about everything. Some of the things should have been known, but have not been propagated widely through the medical system for economic and political reasons. Let's put it that way. But but certainly in the last 4 years, a lot more has been learned about viruses that, as we talked about with the immunity debt, lie, right? That is not correct. That when you get viruses, you're getting stronger, and it lasts for a long period of time. The damage to your body, right? That happened to her, right? Where she lost her vision, right? She's getting numbness. She lost her vision. Her face doesn't move. Half her face is not moving properly. That is part of the damage that the virus is doing, right? And like she said, her carotid arteries, right? Her arteries that are supplying the blood to her brain, right, and to other parts of her body, to her, the arteries are being sealed up. What is causing the arteries to seal up, right? It's not it's not something in your nose. It's not something in your throat, right? It's the COVID that is attacking every part of your body. It is in your blood, attacking your blood vessels. They started talking about sometimes the numbness that you're feeling is the small blood vessels. Sometimes you're feeling like scratchy, just strange sensations. Sometimes you got fatigue, cramps, is because your blood vessels themselves are being damaged by the COVID-19, right? It's like there's diabetic neuropathy is a condition that people will get sometimes if you have diabetes, where the blood vessels your blood vessels can start to, especially the smaller microscopic, really small blood vessels, start to have problems, and then or just collapse, and then that causes the feeling of hot and cold, numbness, pain at random times, right? And so that's a similar symptom that fibromyalgia is a more extreme form of that, but basically when you're having those symptoms, right, and you may not have those symptoms, right? You could have COVID and you could be having damage, but you might not have those symptoms, right? You might not have your face, right? But by the time you have such a bad stroke, the thing is, you can also have a stroke and you don't know that either, right? She, as the doctors told her, she had several strokes, but she didn't know that. So the point, but she didn't realize that the previous doctors, right, didn't figure that out or didn't tell her. Either way, it doesn't matter, right? You're the one having the brain damage. You're the one having your organ damage. You're the one having your body damaged, and that this damage is happening silently, right? And the damage is just accumulating, right? If you get a little bit of damage, right, like over time, your body has wear and tear, right? That's normal. But when you're having internal organ damage, there's not really pain sensors that are going to detect that, right? For a long time. When you're having blood vessel damage, your body's not, you can't really feel that, right? until by the time when it gets more extreme, right, like this to this level, then you know it. When you start feeling the numbness, right, then it's already been going on for a while, right? So you're not being informed of how badly you're being harmed by viruses, bacteria, and that includes flu. That includes some people believe, actually there's some studies that show that after the Spanish flu of the early, in the early 20th century, right, in the 1918, that this there was a huge burst in heart attacks and heart disease and all these problems that have to do with your cardiovascular system. And then the children that were born after the Spanish flu suddenly have this huge spike, right? So the new studies, and people just haven't gone back and looked at this data, but looking back at it now, people are discovering that doctors and scientists are discovering that actually catching the flu is also correlated with a huge increase in your heart attack, in your blood vessel, ultimately artery and blood vessel damage, which leads to blood pressure problems, all these other problems, right? And so, but you don't that's not visible in the record until decades and decades later, right? Because you're not really at that, the flu was not necessarily causing a huge number of strokes in that time. People were not really looking for that, right? It's not because there's this years or decades delay to recognize after the viruses have damaged your body, after the viruses and the infections and the sicknesses have damaged your body, right? You think that, the bad part about the flu is that you have, aches and pains, you're sneezing and you're coughing, and that's the flu is, you get the flu 2 weeks later, right? You've gone through this fevers, the coughing, the sneezing, and you're lying in bed with a thermometer in your mouth, like, just wishing for the day you can go back to, playing outside and touching grass if there still is grass, because you're waiting to get well, right? And then after that 2 weeks, you're done. That's not the end of the flu. The flu is when you have a heart attack when you're 55. That's part of it. The flu is like when you have like mysterious random losses to your brain power because you're having strokes, right? This is not acknowledged because if everybody knew that, maybe people would have worn masks forever. If people actually knew that you could live to 100 pretty healthy, Hawaiians, we live to 100 regularly before contact, without getting disease. Now, of course, like you could still survive for a lot of your life, and if you live that long, to your 80s or your 60s or 70s or 80s, I mean, that's better than nothing, right? But at the same time, you are causing damage, and the thing is, the COVID damage is way worse than the flu, right? It's the scientists that have studied AIDS are saying, in fact, that COVID that's why I said don't get airborne AIDS. COVID, in fact, resembles AIDS, the way that it attacks the immune system, the way that it like rapidly degrades the immune system, uses up the T cells, right? COVID is the number at the current moment, right? Because it's been 30 plus years of AIDS, right, and HIV, right? But at this moment, COVID is the third leading cause of the loss of the T cells, the loss of, or there's that word for it, the scientific word, it starts with an L, I can't remember what it is, that the loss of your immune system's soldiers, basically. It's just destroying your immune system, right? And COVID is right after AIDS, right? It's like number 2 is AIDS, and then number 3 is COVID. COVID could overtake AIDS soon in destroying the immune system, right? And the thing is, there is no treatment there is no real treatment for that problem that COVID causes, and that's one of many problems, right? The destruction of the immune system, that's after that's in conjunction with the blood clots, the brain damage, the organ damage, right? All the other stuff. So really, COVID is actually worse than AIDS if you look at it that way. Now, scientists and doctors are not going to acknowledge that. The governments, certainly capitalist, Western governments, governments that prioritize, the profit of a few over the health and the wealth and the success of the many, they're not going to inform you about that. They don't want to propagate that idea through the society. because that would mean right, a disruption to profit, to benefit the health and the future of the masses, right? And that's obviously not what they do in the United States and places like that, like, and so they're not going to ever do that, because it would mean, to deal with that problem would mean when people trying to limit the amount of viruses in general they get, trying to limit especially the amount of COVID-19, right, that they get, just in general. I mean, it'd be very difficult for humans to never ever catch a virus ever again. I mean, that's maybe we could one day get to that point, but we're certainly not there yet. But I mean, you want to limit how much total COVID-19 is being caught by the entire human system, right? By the 8 billion people on Earth, right? If 8 billion people catch 2 COVID rounds a year, the average American catches 1.5, at least 1. The studies have shown 1.5 cases of COVID per year, right? So some years you catch 2. Some years some people catch 2 COVID different variants. Some years you catch 3 or 4 COVID variants, right? Because coming back to that topic I was saying earlier, which is that the COVID virus, like many other viruses, doesn't stay. It mutates, and COVID mutates faster than almost any other virus. COVID, it matches or exceeds the most contagious virus. Was it measles? It meets or exceeds the R quotient, or basically how fast and how easily a virus spreads, than any other virus. And so COVID, and it also mutates, right, way faster than other viruses. Like the flu, on average, I think it's about once a year. You have a different variant a year. Every 3 months, COVID is making at least one new form. It's mutating into a new form of itself. So after 3 months, that's idea that, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? When you first get COVID, after if you recover from COVID, which is questionable, long COVID can last indefinitely. 90% of patients with long COVID actually never recover, or 90+% of patients never recover from long COVID. So, but after you get the initial infection, right? Your body has developed some amount of your immune system has developed an ability to target that specific variant, right? So the alpha variant, the Delta variant, right, in 2021 or whenever it was that it came out, I think it was 2021. The first Omicron variant. But then after Omicron, then you have BA1, then you have BA2, the Kraken variant. You've got I can't remember what it is now, but they have all these new names, right? Because each one of these new variants, your immune system is, after a few months, is again susceptible. It cannot retarget. It doesn't have the targeting information for the new variant, right? Or it has partial, but it doesn't have enough, and so you get sick again. That's why people keep getting COVID, and each reinfection multiplies and doubles or triples and quadruples each time you get reinfected the chances of long COVID, right? And it's really like what the studies are also showing is that in patients that have passed away, when they're doing like autopsies on people who have died with COVID, 100% of people that have had COVID have COVID in their heart tissue. Let me say that again. So like whatever, if you think COVID has left your body because you're not sneezing, if you stick the nasal swab in your nose and you scrub it around in your nasal tissue, right? And you take it out and you put it into the rapid antigen test, or you do your COVID test and it comes up negative. Even if you do it 5 times and it comes up negative, and you're like, oh, well, I've done my COVID test several times. Now I'm okay to go to the Christmas party. I'm okay to go back to work. I'm okay to go to school, or go to this massive concert with 500,000 people in it. Or I'm okay to go to that rally for Palestine. You should go to. Do that support. But I'm going to go to that unmasked. Go to the masked because you live in a horrible dystopian, fascist police state like the Western countries, but also because you don't want to spread mass disabling airborne AIDS, mass killing viruses as well. And so when you take the test though, the test is detecting uh, whether COVID is in your nasal passage and in your throat, right? But again, right, and that comes up negative after often like within 5 to 10 15 days or so. I forget the exact, it's more than 5 days usually, but after some certain number of days or weeks, you're usually coming up negative. Not always, right? Some people can have it in there for a long time, but the COVID is not gone from your body, right? The nasal passages and the throat, right? These are like the bulwark in the military sense. These are the front line. These are like the front barricades. These are like the gates to the city, right, of your body. And so they're constantly being defended, and there's like there are watchtowers. There's a lot of guards posted there. Your nose is constantly, right, you're ejecting the mucus, right, from your nose. It's leaking out. You're swallowing it. The throat, you're coughing, right, and you're expelling. It's always in motion, right, because you're trying to expel potential invading malicious entities, right? And so if the entity is still trying to enter, right, then you're going to keep detecting it there. But and you have an immune system that is attacking your white blood cells are attacking diseases inside your body too. But when the virus gets into your organs, like your heart, again, 100% of COVID patients have been shown to have COVID virus in their heart when they die, right? It's been found in your pancreas, in your stomach lining, right, in your intestines, right, in your brain. The brain is because of the blood-brain barrier. The rest of there's basically like almost like a invisible like force field between your brain and the rest of your body for reasons, because your brain is very important to your survival, right? If you're legally dead when you're brain dead, right? In most modern legal systems, because your brain is important, it also makes it difficult, and your brain kind of has a shield around it that makes it difficult for medicine. It makes it difficult for viruses, but it's not impervious, not 100%, right? And so encephalitis and there's other diseases that cause brain inflammation, right? And then when you're trying to get medicine into the brain, it's very difficult, right? So COVID hides in your brain. COVID also causes many neurological problems, like actually like basically causes clusters of your neuron to basically fuse together and then basically die off. So that's why people will report like not being able to suddenly trying to search for words and like losing half their vocabulary, unable to like locate words in their mind. Kids who are like reading sentences who get COVID, and kids, it's very sad, but kids are 70% of COVID spread has come through children. Remember, kids, it was deemed that COVID couldn't impact kids early on, right? Young people that, I'm 20, so I can't be impacted by COVID. I definitely can't have a catastrophic strokes that cause me to lose half my face, right? But obviously that was all false. So the children who had COVID, also there was no immunization, remember, for kids under 5. So those kids that are, if you had COVID, also pregnant mothers who had COVID, that also, it caused problems during gestation for the children that inside the mother. 0, infants getting COVID, they're all getting COVID. Those are critical developmental years. We don't know what's going to happen to those kids who were born during COVID, got COVID when they were 1, reinfected when they were 2, reinfected when they were 3, because they don't have any ability to control, right? This who's infected, they can't choose to wear a mask when you're 3 or when you're 1 at that time. And so anyways, so the kids are entering school and they can't form sentences. They're reading paragraphs and they can read the words like see spot run, the lazy brown, fox jumps over, the quick fox jumps over the lazy brown dog or whatever. And they're reading paragraphs, but they can't remember what they just read after they've read the paragraph, right? And that's the brain damage that's happening. Invisibly, you can't see it. You just feel foggy. You feel like I can't think straight. I feel like I can't focus. There were professors who were like, Tilda Swinton was in the middle of filming a blockbuster movie, and she was forgetting her lines. Like, she just couldn't remember the lines that she was supposed to be saying, right? But that's because parts of your brain are just shutting down, and they're not coming back. You know, like that. The areas like they don't have a fix for like the dead neurons. I mean, it's like getting, you know, if you like drink extremely to excess, like repeatedly, if you have severe traumatic brain injury, right? I mean, your brain doesn't like, you know, it's you know, it's neuroplastic, and you know it can adapt in some ways, but you know, you don't have infinite brain tissue. And if you keep reinfecting yourself with COVID, and you do anything that involves intellectual capacity, mental capacity, thinking, reading, writing, talking, video essay creation for YouTube, and involves a lot of that, editing, you know, then that's not a smart thing to be doing. But anyways, but like, long story short, so the damage is all happening. That's not in your respiratory system, right? So number one, getting a COVID test that doesn't, I mean, you're probably less contagious when you have a negative COVID test, right? But that doesn't mean that COVID is gone from your body. In fact, the studies are basically saying COVID is never gone from your body, right? Now, you might not be having the immediate, you're not having the respiratory, the coughing, the sneezing, the body aches, you know, you're not having the respiratory symptoms. What people think of as the COVID, that's not the COVID, right? When you get AIDS, you can have those respiratory symptoms, right? That's not the COVID, that's not the COVID-19 damage, right? The COVID is in you forever. When you get multiple rounds of COVID are in you forever. Multiple variants are in you forever. Maybe they're fighting amongst each other. Who gets to rule this dying body? But anyway, so that's a major thing that people have to recognize, that a lot of people aren't recognizing, or don't know about. It's being hidden from people, and the immunity that is false. That's a lie, because each year it's a different flu virus, right? There are different strains of pneumonia, so that's a lie. The more, when you get sick and your body uses up T cells and immune system, it's like, you know, it's like your spoons, right? Spoonie theory for people, you know, disabled folks such as, you know, myself as well. I have a limited number of back spoons I can use before I have to lie down for a period of time to recharge my back, like it's a cybernetic arm with you know, terrible corporate planned obsolescence battery in it and actuators, like in Neofeud 1. But anyways, so when you plan for the you know, when you get an illness, when you contract an illness, your body has a limited reservoir of immune system, you know, arsenal, has a limited amount of ammunition, right? And then it depletes. So your T cells, right, your white blood cells, they deplete, and the more severe, the more virulent, and the more difficult the virus, and the worse it is for your immune system. So it gets more depleted, like a bank account, right? And also, and some illnesses like AIDS directly attack the immune system, and COVID directly attacks the immune system. The COVID actually binds to white blood cells. It goes into, and it actually attacks and tricks and thwarts the immune system. It actually goes for the immune system, and so then those are even worse, right? And so when you get COVID, like, the studies also show that immune systems don't recover immediately. And in fact, some people's immune systems never recover from COVID. Like, they never, their level of white blood cells, their T cells, and the quality of the functioning of immune systems in some COVID patients never recovers. Right? It's like AIDS, like HIV AIDS. And so then when you get the COVID, you're rapidly losing your bank account of blood cells, right? Your arsenal of blood cells is dropping. White blood cells is dropping. And then when you catch the pneumonia, the thing is, right, when people who get AIDS, right, like, I think pneumonia is one of the most common actual, right, reasons for death, right? One of the most common life-threatening causes of infection with bacteria HIV should get a vaccine to prevent infection. Trying to find the actual opportunistic infections such as pneumococcus, or malignancies like Kaposi's sarcoma can signal the final stage of HIV infection. So like, because pneumonia is they're very opportunistic, right? If you have a depleted immune system, right, the pneumonia is often around, right? When you have a depleted immune system is when pneumonia strikes, right? It's opportunistic like that, and so that's the way that people who often get extremely ill or die from AIDS is when the pneumonia strikes, right? And so this huge increase in pneumonia, right? I forgot. It's like we're looking at. There was one study. What was that one? What was that? I think I had a link to it. Let me see if I have that. That showed that the pneumonia is now off the charts. So that's our survivor. That's our 20-year-old who got COVID and had a stroke. And let's see. It's my bookmarks. Or actually, let's watch this. Let's watch this real fast, because it's directly related. And this right above it, I have the other video related to that as well.
Please. Hello, little gay people in my phone. I have a request for you today. During this time when we are all becoming increasingly aware of just how much propaganda we're being fed on a daily basis, can you please, try to also internalize the idea that maybe, just maybe, your understanding of COVID has been similarly influenced. Like maybe there is a reason why we have a disease that is currently the third leading cause of death that has been shown to damage every single organ system in the body, that's been shown to have long-term effects in 1 in 10 infections. That's not 1 in 10 people, that's 1 in 10 infections. So if you're on your third, the math is mathing. Like maybe there is a reason why we can have all of that going on at once. Meanwhile, word on the street and word according to a lot of common media is that it's either over or it's mild. It's ripping through communities enough to still be the third leading cause of death, and people are surprised to get it. Level of misinformation out there is immense, and none of us are immune to it. Like, it's really tempting to believe this stuff because it's fucking everywhere, and it's nicer to believe. None of us want to still be in this mess. Like, that's the thing about propaganda. Often all it has to do is cast doubt. Our governments were incredibly clear about the fact that they opened up for the health of the economy, not for the health of the people. If we all had access to the data that demonstrated the long-term impacts of this virus, that should have caused fucking riots. But everyone was exhausted and traumatized and lonely, and the idea that we could all go back to our normal lives was a really nice one. So being told that it was mild, despite the mountains of evidence to the contrary, was enough. It's enough to just doubt whether it had. And that's extremely easy to do, because for a lot of people it does feel mild. But this is the thing, you can't feel organ damage, you can't feel vascular damage, you can't feel immune system damage. So if you can't feel them, what would we see if they were happening? What we'd see is more people getting more sick more frequently and staying sick longer. We'd see more heart events, more strokes, we'd see more diabetes, more cancers. And if you look at the data on a healthful, empirically reviewed data is in any way controversial. But this feels terrifying to say. Shit rocked so severely, and to have had my life be made so small by this disease, and to have people who care about me not do anything to stop it from happening to them.
So anyways, and that's another person who was like catastrophically ill from COVID and has had a very, very difficult life since. And yeah, you will be unfortunately sad that it is. I mean, people are left alone to fend for themselves and forsaken by their not as sick friends and family, unfortunately, a lot of the time. But the point is that that you're that again, many things are not being communicated to many people, and people need to be realizing this, especially now, because this is the big travel season. This is the big spreading season. It's cold, you're indoors, viruses last long in the air. It's just the perfect storm for the syndemic, or a quadruple demic, or a quintuple demic. This is the last year to have direct evidence for COVID causing more infections of RSV published last month. So the RSV risk is up 40%. So again, so the pneumonia, right? These RSV, all these illnesses are going way up, right? They're going way up. That they're way above the norm. Like some of them are 40%, 50% up. These are just like off the charts above the norm. And what people are being told is that it's your immunity debt, and next year it'll be better because all of our immunity debt will be paid. Absolute lie. The concept of immunity debt is just completely fraudulent. You have by getting sick, you get immunity immunity hampered, right? When you don't get sick, right? When you don't get sick, you're saving your body, actually, right? It's immunity savings. You're saving up your body's functioning blood vessels, functioning organs, and functioning brain. When you get sick, right? You have a temporary immunity to a limited virus, right? Like, not just one example. Chickenpox doesn't involve, as far as I know, chickenpox doesn't involve that much, right? So when you get people don't get chickenpox every year, right? So like that's like one case, but that's a single virus. It's not the most damaging in the world, right? So if you have a virus or a pathogen that doesn't change very much at all, you could potentially, your body could gain the ability to attack. And also if that virus isn't life destroying and deadly, right? If you have Ebola, let's say you have an Ebola like virus, right? That doesn't evolve very much. Now that I got Ebola virus, now I have immunity to it, so that's good, right? Well, I mean, yeah, if you have an 80% chance of death, that's not good, is it? If you're one of the 1 out of 5 lucky to survive, I'm not sure exact the death rate of Ebola, but it's very high, right? Right? That's not right. So you see where it's like, when you get COVID, you have a 3-month window where you probably won't get it again, right? But that is not immunity debt. Pneumonia is, the pneumonias, RSV, the flu. After 1 year, the immunity debt is gone, right? After 1 year, whatever protection you got from getting the previous infection, that's all gone. So this whole idea, and also, when you get COVID, it long-term destroys your immune system, right? So long story short, like if people hadn't gotten any COVID, that would have drastically reduced the pneumonia, the RSV, right? And all these other infections, right? Not just that, your body needs immune system to fight cancer. So your cancer death rate's going up. Everything is going up. Just like if you have HIV and AIDS and you get cancer, you're gonna be way worse off than if you didn't, right? So same thing. We haven't seen the time. The governments, definitely capitalist Western governments, are rigging even the life expectancy rates. Now, I remember just like reading an article, but it's like very difficult to get information on. But they have no interest in informing people in the same way that they have no interest in informing people about the realities of COVID. It's just mild or it's gone, right? And it's just like immunity debt. So that's so that's what people really need to understand, which is that like even though you're going to be told, corporate media, Western media, I mean, in the same way they lied about Israel Palestine, right? I mean, like so many other things, right? So many other things. I know they're trying to blame it. The pneumonia, it's mystery pneumonia. The thing is, this is not really a mystery pneumonia. They're trying to politicize it, just like they did in the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. Blame somebody else, especially the enemies. They're trying to, the people they're trying to start needless, hegemonic wars with. But the thing is, like, it doesn't matter like where the COVID originated. It doesn't matter like, it doesn't matter where this pneumonia is coming from. The pneumonia is everywhere. Pneumonia is worse in the United States and it's worse in European countries. Why? Because China had one round of COVID. They had a complete lockdown. They actually eliminated the virus hundreds of times. Completely eliminated the virus hundreds of times as it re-entered because of their system that they had, the COVID zero policy for 3 years at least, right? So they've had like one, possibly two rounds. Post, the vaccines do help, and they have other treatments. But Americans and Europeans and the rest of the world, have had COVID 6 times, right? So after the again, and each time you get COVID, the damage multiplies, right? It's not like once you get COVID, if you get it again, it's bad, but it doesn't change how bad your blood, your organs, your brain, your body is damaged, your immune system is damaged. No, every time you get reinfected, it multiplies the chances of a long COVID, the chances of damage, the kind of damage, right? The first time you get COVID, maybe you don't feel much. The second time, you get numbness. You suddenly get winded and you can't walk for a mile without stopping to take a breath or something. The third time, suddenly you get brain fog and you just can't remember sentences. The fourth time, maybe it's mild again and you don't notice, and then maybe the fifth time you have catastrophic COVID and then you die, right? But each time it's cumulative damage. So countries like the United States are, in fact, they're getting the mycoplasmic pneumonia. They're getting all kinds of sicknesses, RSV, pneumonia, but they're trying to say it's mystery pneumonia because then that takes the focus off of the fact that the United States and other countries like that need their people and their governments to be working together to stop the spread of viruses, period. In particular, spread of COVID-19, right? And since people, right, but they don't want to address that, so they just want to kind of cast the blame out and go, well, let's just, I don't know, start another war somewhere. Maybe that'll solve the pneumonia and the COVID, which it won't, right? I mean, we've seen this game already. This was 2020 was like, oh, there's this mystery Wuhan flu, and so the political side is like either COVID doesn't exist. If it does, it came from China. And it's their fault, and they're trying to attack us with a bioweapon. And the other side is like, well, COVID does exist, but it's also China's fault, and they're trying to attack us with a bioweapon. But also, you should, take a shot. And I'm not saying you shouldn't take, medical precautions, but that like neither of those is actually fully dealing with the reality, right? Neither of those are dealing with the reality that we have a catastrophic virus. And At this, we have a catastrophic virus that's mass disabling, mass killing, is going to damage the future. Children are being damaged more than anyone else, and we don't even know how badly they're being damaged. The extent to which children are being damaged and harmed is like immunity, like the reality of immunity destruction, right? That's what's causing the pneumonia. We're not being told about that. And so that's one of the worst parts. We have kids here, so that's why we are doing our best to make sure because our kids can read and write above their grade level. The average kids are like a grade or multiple grades below their level, right? Many kids can't even form sentences entering school. Kids who are going into kindergarten now, right? They've been through 4 years of COVID. A lot of them can't, get through the ABCs, right? Like it's bad enough to have lose words, but imagine your brain is being damaged before you've even been able to form the pathways and the neural constellations. So the impact on learning, and again, whatever impact COVID has on learning, the governments and Western, certainly corrupt institutions, which are most of the U.S. and these oligarchic nightmare places, the level, they're not going to acknowledge that it was the COVID that's been causing it. They're saying the problem is the lockdown. The problem is the kids are too isolated, and like obviously it is not ideal and it is not fun, right? To be social distanced and these kinds of things. But number one, there's ways around that, right? There's masking, there's doing things outdoors, there's taking all kind of precautions and other there's medical interventions, and there's online things that can be done, right? And number two, the actual permanent damage, right, that is irreversible. I mean, if you don't go to a party, if the kids don't go to a park and play unmasked with other kids for a little bit, those things, those things are not permanent physical destruction of the body, right? But the children who have been forced into classrooms that have had 6 reinfections, right, of a virus that is causing massive total body damage, right? That is irreversible, right? And that's what, because every government, every institution, right, every leader, right, business leaders, political leaders, religious leaders, right, your school leaders, university leaders, right, every one of these people, right, even parents of the children themselves, don't want to be held culpable, potentially criminally indictable for their damage to children, right? Because a lot of talk about there's horrible things that is happening to Palestinian children backed by the West and the United States, obviously, and several other entities, and people care about that, right? But a lot of people, they're not ready to admit that maybe choices that they've made have also harmed children, maybe more invisibly, but it's massive harm nonetheless. And so that there's this kind of internal, kind of like everybody just wanted to feel normal again, and also everybody just wanted to not feel guilty of harming children. I mean, and harming everyone else, but especially children, because children don't have a choice in that. And so there's another piece of that puzzle, but certainly the governments, right, and certainly health officials who have withheld data and have lied, right? They definitely, and the business leaders who would make less money with people following COVID restrictions than going out shopping, partying, getting on planes, and flying all over the place, right? So anyway, so long story short, and to kind of sum this up so I can get done with this video quickly, there is a surge in pneumonias. That's incontrovertible. There is, and many other illnesses, and RSV. Syndemic, it just kind of means a confluence of multiple illnesses coming together to cause greater damage alone than they would alone, and then also working together with each other. So because COVID does work to help other viruses invade. COVID cracks open the door to your defenses and lets the viruses in, right? It's the opposite of immunity debt. It's immunity damage from getting illnesses that is causing the increase in illnesses, right? Right? It's not the lack of getting sick, it's the constantly getting sick, especially with immune damaging illnesses like COVID. That's the actual science. Anyways, and Permademic, because this is not a situation, right? I hope that most people are coming to the realization, right, now that COVID is exploding again, and thankfully a lot of people at and stop the genocide in Palestine protests. I see a lot more people like majority masking, which is better. That's not the only thing, but that's an improvement from almost nobody doing it. Like, I think there was a study that showed it was 12% of Americans wear a mask at any time, right? So, and that's not every single one of them are wearing it in all contexts, but 12% are wearing it at any time. And so now it's a little bit higher. It needs to get higher than that. And it should be like as high quality as you can get that properly fits your face, like N95, K95, K94, C95, etc. That fits your face. If you ever get an N90, if you have an N95 that doesn't, because they have very inflexible nose bridge areas. If you have a 95 plus grade respirator that doesn't fit your face properly, then that is not much better than not wearing a that's a lot. That's not going to stop airborne virus transmission. That will stop some of the liquid spray, right, when you're talking to somebody directly, but a lot of the COVID is coming through airborne. And 40% of COVID infections are asymptomatic. So it means the person transmitting it and the person getting it, they show no symptoms, yet they're transmitting it. So that's important for me. Just because you see other people think, in this time of get-togethers and Christmas and whatever other holidays and the other big joyful celebrations. Remember, just because somebody isn't sick, they're not sneezing or coughing, that almost half of people who get COVID, they're spreading it without any symptoms. They're just talking, looking perfectly healthy. So that's not a reliable indicator. Also, anymore. So we're in an ongoing, permademic reality. In particular, it really like it's kind of like a lot of other diseases and a lot of other problems could have been reduced, right? What the doctor is trained to tell you is, eat a healthier diet and do more exercise, right? Or just, eat more. Here's a food pyramid and do more exercise. A lot of the food pyramid is just like, here's what the big agriculture, monocropping corporate frankenfood industry told us to sell today, and go spend more money on ab crunchers for yourself and your relatives that they're all going to throw out this Christmas, right? I mean, I'm not saying don't exercise, and I'm not saying don't eat healthier, obviously, but if you have a capitalist profit-based health system that has no interest in telling anyone the truth, unfortunately, that means that a lot of time people, including the medical system, are directly lying, and that includes in this time. And that's why some people are saying you should definitely, if you have COVID, try to see a younger doctor, because the chronic illness, right? And a lot of times this sexism and misogyny is part of this as well, because I think long COVID and other kinds of a chronic fatigue syndrome, these are more common in women and femme and non-men people. I think at COVID, it's like at least 10 or 20% more common to have long COVID. There's reasons for that, because of the way that the body's, the way that metabolisms and the functioning of cells, the way that cells convert energy, latent chemical energy into usable kinetic energy. So the chronic fatigue, which is one of the major impacts of getting viruses and illnesses in the long term, right? Those have all been like basically lied about, not investigated, treated as unserious, and so COVID is one that definitely causes, and long COVID is in that spectrum, right? It's a lot of its impacts are these kind of long term, not very visible. Like if you have a broken bone, it's obvious, right? Kind of like, well, what you can see on an X-ray, this is where it's broken. If you have a heart attack, you can take a look and you go, oh, well, that heart is not beating, or that person is really dying, right? And so those are like big, obvious problems in the body that can like have kind of a clear crisis moment and then a solution or near solution, right? But these other things, right? These other damages that are long-term, more invisible, no immediate signs, but they're just as serious, right? Or, it just as damaging, just as deadly, and way more common, actually. These have not been well researched. These have not been, certainly the research that has been done is not being propagated. And so seeing a doctor that, it's kind of like seeing the therapist, right? You see the therapist that's not, people of certain genders, identities, nationalities, and other orientations that they see a certain kind of therapist that doesn't understand the kind of problems they have. They're not going to have the kind of mental health outcomes that they would like, because the mental health specialist might not even recognize things as problems, right? And across racial lines, across all these other things, right? So similarly for physical health, the older, not just older doctors, but there are a lot. Unfortunately, there's a lot of doctors that are not like that other person we just showed that had this stroke. They were just written off as having, you're just having anxiety, right? And unfortunately, that's I've had this situation too where they thought, the doctor said, oh, you're just having a little flu, and I was having like catastrophic, like basically inevitable death was the kind of illness that I had, and the doctor said you had some flu, and it took a while to figure out that I was actually dying, like way too long. I have long-term damage to my body from that, and Holly's has had similar situations, right? And so but because we've had those situations, we're like, no doctor has said, oh, well, when we misdiagnosed or we didn't tell you about that catastrophic illness you had, that's caused long-term organ damage and nerve damage and brain damage. Hospitals and doctors don't want to admit that because that will cost them money for malpractice. But that's another factor, right? Because if they start admitting, oh, whenever these illnesses happen and we fail to diagnose them, or we gaslit millions of people who had these viruses and illnesses, and we said, oh, you just need to get some exercise and diet, that opens them up to all this culpability too. So this is doubling, tripling, quadrupling, octupling down on the lies for economic reasons, for legal reasons, because of hubris and stuck up toxic, masculinity and toxic snobbery reasons. Yeah, anyways, so but that's that's just extra data that people should have. And so so be careful with that. Wear your mask, well-fitting mask ideally. Any mask is better than nothing, but wearing a mask that is not in the N95 or KN95 or 94 grade or higher is good. But also one that fits your face, one that you actually wear. If it's too expensive for you to afford and then you don't wear it half the time because you can't afford to get a new one, that's not good either. That's not right. That's not it. So be safe out there, and just remember that immunity debt is BS. Everything we do here is supported by the sales of the support through Ko-Fi. So consider, if you found this video worth watching, educational in some way, then support us through Ko-Fi. We could really use that support. Give the gift of Christmas giving. Also, good to see Big Teal and Comrade Internet and everyone else in the chat. Thanks for showing up. If you would like to support us in a long-term fashion and help the Silver Spook Cooperative do indigenous, land-back, decolonial, anti-capitalist, and also true medical information dissemination, you can also support us through the Silver Spook Patreon at patreon.com/Neofeud. And of course, you can get Neofeud, which is a cyberpunk adventure game, anti-capitalist, anti-colonial, anti-racist cyberpunk adventure game made by myself at the over 2.5 years here at the Silver Spook Cooperative, and it is on Steam. And you can help us out also by giving it even a very short review, because it helps us to get the game discovered in the Steam algorithm. You can also get the games on itch.io for Windows and Mac and Linux. And if you already have Neofeud, get Decolonators as a Christmas present for your friends, family, neighbors, fellow game players. That special someone. They will thank you when you get them in Digistar, which is a game that is a game about stopping the plundering and destruction of a native planet. It's an indigenous decolonial struggle with 2001: A Space Odyssey characteristics. And there's also Pigeon with Gun, which is about being a pigeon with a gun fighting gajillionaires and giant robots. And also Woman is a book by Holly about being raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity and then critiquing that reality in a story that is told from the perspective of Mary from the Bible. You can also support at Silver Spook. You can follow at Silver Spook Games at octodon.social, and you can also follow Silver Spook at mastodon.social. Looks like they're having a problem. You can also follow at Silver Spook Guy on Twitter, at Silver Spook Games minus the E in silver for the games related stuff, and there's also Instagram and Facebook. And sometimes I take pictures of myself and those, because I'm also a queer Mahu, which is a gender fluid, non-binary / trans gender identity in our Hawaiian culture. And you can find more of those on Silver Spook Glams, as well as sometimes I post it. I have a whole Christmas set, so if you want to see, if you want Christmas, if you want socially distanced sexy Christmas ideas, then you can you can see me decorating the Christmas tree and on this Silver Spook Glams. Don't spread COVID, only spread thirst. Anyway, you can also follow Terminus Cyberstar is the low poly cyberpunk 3D RPG that I'm currently the content director and writer on, that is currently still in development. You can follow them there. And then of course you can follow Holly at the Tech Fairy. Holly is wife partner here, producer manager for the Kate Nix music and variety show. Holly is also a parent and caregiver to 2 Hawaiian keiki or children here at the Silver Spook Cooperative. wearing masks and doing all these important education spreading. And I apologize. I'm trying to finish Neofeud 2. I wish I had a Christmas present of finished Neofeud 2 for you this month, but it's not quite done. Although I have a rough version of the game is essential. Every scene in the game has gameplay in it. So every scene in the game has gameplay in it. It's not 100% done though. So I apologize that the Neofeud 2 is not yet here, but it is coming soon. I just have to go through the final phases of it. Thank you very much to all the Patreon patrons on the list. Until next, we massively appreciate that. And without your support, it's difficult for us to keep doing this work. And I got to go back and I think I have 2 of the same person. I got to change that. Without your support, it becomes very difficult for us to do this work because we got to keep the lights on. We're not making very much money at all. So any dollars really does help to go a long way to keep having the streams. And one more quick shout out. I just want to throw this up there in the Patreon. If you become a Patreon patron, I made a whole video just for the Patreon patrons about the Silver Spook Native Hawaiian ecology restoring garden / food forest, which is here that is I showed some of it on Twitch, but I talk about and go in more in depth into all the crops that we're going to build food security, restore the lands, prevent wildfires, and have a pluricrop garden instead of a monocrop lawn. And if you want to see more about that, that's another incentive to becoming a Patreon patron. So, but yeah, that's only for the patrons. All right. Until next time, we'll be back in the evening to talk about whatever's and on Twitch, not whatever's, but we'll be back around 5 or 4 Pacific time. And keep it in Mayor Shay's Polish, be excellent to each other, and be safe and healthy.